Saturday night, Gainbridge Fieldhouse, overtime, and the Indiana Fever are losing to a team built almost entirely out of rookies and second-year players. Caitlin Clark is on the floor. She's already given this game everything. 32 points, 7 threes, 8 assists, a clutch shot in the fourth quarter that forced overtime, when most players would have simply stepped back and let the moment pass. She did her job. She did more than her job. And none of it mattered. Because somewhere between the third quarter and the overtime buzzer, Aaliyah Boston, the woman holding the largest contract in WNBA history, walked off the court with a lower leg injury and never came back. The broadcast team said it plainly: lower leg injury, will not return. And the Indiana Fever, a franchise worth hundreds of millions of dollars, a franchise that controls the Indiana Pacers and holds a stake in the league office itself, stared at that moment and had absolutely nothing to answer with. Not a veteran center, not a defensive rim protector, not a single player on that bench who could walk in and absorb even 10 minutes of what Boston was supposed to give. The roster was there, the bodies were there, but the right player, the one who was supposed to exist for exactly this kind of moment, she wasn't in the building because the front office spent 9 months deciding she wasn't worth signing. This is the story of how that happened, how a franchise wrote the largest contract in WNBA history, deliberately structured it with room to build around her star, and then chose not to build. How they let key players walk, dressed their decisions in financial language, and what all of it actually signals for Caitlin Clark, a 23-year-old who was going to sit across from this same organization in a Supermax negotiation in 2027 and have to decide whether to trust them. It starts the way most Indiana Fever problems start, with the math. Before we get into what the front office did wrong, we need to be honest about what happened on the floor Saturday night, because it would be very easy to look at an overtime loss and start asking questions about the wrong people. Caitlin Clark dropped 32 points against the Washington Mystics, 7 threes, 8 assists. She forced overtime with a clutch three-pointer when the game was slipping away, the kind of shot that requires ice in your veins and complete tunnel vision. She is 23 years old, and she plays like someone who has been in pressure situations her entire life, because she has. And still, Indiana lost. Washington shot 56% from the field. They outscored Indiana by 30 points in the paint. 30. That is not a close number. That is a team exposing a structural weakness so thoroughly that the final score almost doesn't tell the full story. A roster built around rookies and second-year players walked into Gainbridge Fieldhouse and carved up Indiana's front court like there was nothing there to stop them, because there wasn't. That is not Caitlin Clark's problem to solve. You cannot hit enough threes to compensate for surrendering the paint by 30. You cannot run enough pick and rolls to make up for a front court that has no answer once its best player goes down. When Aaliyah Boston walked off and the broadcast confirmed she wasn't coming back, the game was already over in the ways that mattered. Clark forced overtime anyway. Sonia Citron hit a half-court heave that was a millisecond too late. The Fever lost, and the question that hung over that locker room, the one nobody on the coaching staff could answer cleanly, was simple. Why isn't there anyone out there who can do what Boston does? Why is Indiana one injury away from having no front court at all? The answer to that question was written 9 months ago in an Indianapolis front office, and it starts with a contract. In April of 2025, the Indiana Fever signed Aaliyah Boston to a 4-year, $6.3 million contract, the largest in WNBA history, not by a small margin, but by structure. The deal was deliberately written so that Boston's first-year salary landed $190,000 below the league maximum. That gap wasn't an accident. It wasn't a negotiation oversight. The front office put it there on purpose, so they would have financial flexibility. So when the season started and teams game planned for Boston in the post, Indiana would have pieces around her that made that attention dangerous. Then they didn't build. What the Fever did with that cap space was add guards. They re-signed Lexi Hall. They drafted Raven Johnson and Justine Pissott in the rookie class. They brought in Nylissa Smith on a veteran deal at the 4.
Misha Hens Island came aboard for cheap depth at the same position. 5 guards and 2 front court players. That was the offseason. That was the construction project.
No starting caliber backup at center. No defensive rim protector who could eat 20 minutes and give Boston a real night off. No veteran big who had seen enough playoff basketball to know what it looks like when a team starts hunting your post player in the third quarter of a close game. The player who could have been that for Indiana, the one who actually fit the profile, who knew the system, who had worn the uniform, she signed with the Minnesota Lynx in October. The Fever let her go and didn't replace her. 9 months passed, the season started, and on Saturday night, when Boston walked to the locker room and the broadcast team said she wasn't coming back, Indiana looked at their bench and found exactly what they had built. Nothing. Here is where it gets harder to look away. On Thursday night in Arlington, Texas, Natasha Howard scored 26 points for the Minnesota Lynx. 19 of those points came in the second half. She shot 11 of 14 from the field. She hit the tie-breaking basket with 51 seconds remaining to beat the Dallas Wings on the road. A complete, dominant performance from a front court player who knew exactly what she was doing and exactly how to do it in a high-pressure moment. Last season, Natasha Howard wore Indiana Fever navy and gold. The franchise let her leave in October. They did not replace her. And now she is the most complete front court player in the Lynx rotation, doing in Minnesota the exact thing Indiana desperately needs someone to do in Indianapolis. But Howard is only the loudest receipt. A week earlier, on opening night, the player who burned Indiana for 20 points was Odyssey Sims. Sims spent 2 seasons in a Fever uniform. The front office let her walk. She scored 20 against her former team in the very first game of the year. The kind of performance that stings, not because it's shocking, but because it's so completely predictable. You don't have to be a scout to understand what happens when you let a productive, experienced guard leave and don't bring in anyone who can do what she did. 2 former Fever players, 2 roster decisions that were framed as financial discipline last October. By May, those decisions look like something else entirely. They look like a front office that made peace with losing specific players, told itself it had solved the problem another way, and is now watching the bill arrive in real time every single game. And the bill is getting expensive. The Indiana Fever's president of basketball and business operations is Kelly Kroskoff. She came back to the role in September of 2024 after 6 years inside the Pacers organization. She is not new to this. She is not learning on the job. The roster she helped build the first time she held this position won the 2012 WNBA championship. She knows what a complete team looks like. She knows what depth means. She has seen the difference between a roster that can absorb an injury and a roster that cannot. Below her, Amber Cox runs day-to-day operations as Chief Operating Officer and General Manager. Together, they approved an offseason that gave Indiana 5 guards and 2 front court players and signed neither a starting caliber backup center nor a defensive rim protector to a deal worth losing sleep over. And when the questions started coming at Media Day, they had an answer ready. On April 29th, Cox stood at the podium and used a phrase that the rest of the league has been quietly repeating ever since. She talked about decisions made against a hard cap in the future. The hard cap, the new CBA, future flexibility, financial responsibility. It is a very clean way to explain away a very specific failure, because nobody in Indianapolis was asking the front office to balance the books. Nobody was demanding they tear up their financial future chasing one veteran big. The question was simpler and less forgiving than that. You signed the largest contract in league history, and you left $190,000 on the table specifically so you could build around her. What did you build? The hard cap does not explain why Natasha Howard is in Minnesota. It does not explain why Odyssey Sims scored 20 on opening night. It does not explain why when Boston walked off the floor on Saturday, nobody on the Indiana bench could change the math. Those are not cap decisions, those are priority decisions, and the priority, apparently, was not protecting a $6.3 million investment. What makes this harder to dismiss as bad luck or a single front office miscalculation is that the pattern doesn't stop with Aaliyah Boston.
Look at Sophie Cunningham. She re-signed in April after spending the back half of last season recovering from a torn MCL. That is a serious injury. A torn MCL does not disappear on its own. It requires time, real rehab, a genuine preseason. On Saturday night, Cunningham played 20 minutes against the Washington Mystics. That was just her third game back. 20 minutes on a knee that this franchise did not give a real preseason to heal. Whether that decision came from the coaching staff or the front office, it belongs to the organization, and the organization let it happen. Now look at Kelsey Mitchell. Mitchell signed the first ever Supermax deal under the new CBA in April, $1.4 million, representing 20% of Indiana's cap. On Saturday night, she was the only player on the floor besides Clark who could be trusted to make a shot in the fourth quarter. The franchise's investment in Mitchell sits at 1/5 of the cap. The investment behind her, behind both her and Clark, behind the two players carrying this team's offense, is minimum deal veterans and unproven rookies. Pay the stars, refuse to protect them. That is the pattern. It is not one bad decision or one unlucky injury or one quiet offseason where the market moved faster than expected. It is a posture. A repeated, deliberate posture that shows up everywhere you look on this roster. In the front court depth, in the way Cunningham's knee was handled, in the gap between what Mitchell and Clark are being paid and what surrounds them every night. Stars are not enough. Stars need infrastructure, and Indiana keeps acting like signing them is the end of the job rather than the beginning. In 2 days, the Portland Fire come to Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Portland is a brand new franchise. They were built through an expansion draft and a rookie class. They selected Iano Martin Carrion 7th overall and constructed a roster of fresh faces and reclamation projects. Players figuring out what they can be at this level, not players who have already answered that question. If Aaliyah Boston plays her normal minutes on Wednesday, Indiana wins by 12, maybe 15, maybe more. The talent gap is real, and the Fire are still learning what professional basketball looks like at this pace. A healthy, full-strength Fever team handles this game without much drama. But nobody knows if Boston plays Wednesday. Nobody knows how many minutes she can give. The injury hasn't been classified. The only information that exists publicly is what the broadcast team confirmed on Saturday night. Lower leg injury, will not return. What that means 48 hours later, whether she's available, whether she's limited, whether she's watching from the bench in street clothes, Indiana genuinely does not know yet. So what the Fever walk onto that floor with on Wednesday is this: a star guard who has already absorbed every physical and emotional beating this league can deliver. A backcourt partner on a Supermax deal, carrying 20% of the cap. A forward nursing an MCL recovery who is playing heavy minutes in just her third game back. And a hole in the middle of the roster where a rim protector is supposed to be. A hole that existed since October, that was visible to anyone paying attention, and that the front office chose not to fill. An expansion team gets home court at full disadvantage, and Indiana still might not be able to take advantage of it. Herb Simon is 91 years old. He broke ground on a $78 million Indiana Fever training facility last September. The renderings dropped in April. It will be the largest training facility in WNBA history. It opens before the 2027 season. By every account, it is going to be a stunning building, a real physical statement that the Indiana Fever are a serious franchise being taken seriously by the people who own it. It is also a building that does not exist yet, and no one can play in it today. In October of 2024, Simon was inducted into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame as a contributor. 40 years of service, founding member of the WNBA, the longest tenured owner in NBA history.
Commissioner Adam Silver called him instrumental in every significant development the league has made over 4 decades. That is not nothing. That is a genuine legacy built across generations of basketball. And yet, Herb Simon has not said a single public word about Aaliyah Boston's injury. He has not addressed the depth behind her, or the lack of it. He has not spoken to the question that every Fever fan with a social media account is currently asking out loud. When does the franchise that controls the Indiana Pacers, owns the Indiana Fever, and sits at the table of the league office start acting like a franchise that actually wants Caitlin Clark to win something?
A $78 million building is a long-term investment. It signals intent. It signals that this franchise plans to be here and to matter. But intent and action are different things. A beautiful facility that opens in 2027 does not fix a front court that is 2 players deep right now. It does not bring back Natasha Howard. It does not close the hole behind Boston that has existed since October. The building is the future. The present is a Saturday night overtime loss to a team of rookies with no one to come off the bench who can do what she does. Simon is silent. The front office has the hard cap speech, and Boston is in the locker room. Here is the real question, the one that lives underneath everything else, that makes this more than just a frustrating regular season story about roster depth. Caitlin Clark's rookie contract ends in 2026. At some point in the not-too-distant future, she is going to sit down with the Indiana Fever and negotiate a Supermax extension, the kind of deal that locks a franchise player into an organization through the back half of her prime. The Fever will want her to sign it. The league will want her to sign it. Sponsors, media partners, the entire commercial infrastructure that has grown up around her in the last 18 months will want her to sign it. And she is going to look at this organization and make a decision. What Aaliyah Boston is experiencing right now in a locker room on a Saturday night, lower leg in question, watching her team lose an overtime game to rookies because there is no one on the bench who can do what she does, is the answer to what that protection looks like when you take the deal. Boston signed in good faith. She took the largest contract in league history from a franchise that deliberately left room in the budget to build around her. She trusted that room would be used. It wasn't. That is the conversation Clark is going to have with herself between now and 2027. Not about the money. The money will be there. Not about Indianapolis. She has said repeatedly that she loves it. The question is whether the people making decisions for this franchise have demonstrated with their actual choices that they can be trusted to protect what they are asking her to commit to. Kelsey Mitchell is on a Supermax and carrying 20% of the cap with minimum deal vets behind her. Sophie Cunningham is playing heavy minutes on a recovering MCL because there is no one deeper on the roster. Natasha Howard is winning games in Minnesota. Odyssey Sims scored 20 on opening night. The training facility opens in 2027, and right now, Herb Simon hasn't said a word. The Indiana Fever play Portland in 2 days. When that tip-off happens, the question that will matter most won't be on the scoreboard. It will be in the stands, in the broadcast booth, in the back of every serious Fever fan's mind. If they won't protect $6.3 million, what exactly are they going to do with $5?